Hi, this is Gila. So Tommy wrote an open letter to his supporters, and apparently things are rather better than they were at Only. That's great to know. He's essentially still in solitary, which is not ideal, but he is protected, he is safe, he can eat, he can exercise, he's getting loads of emails, but please send him emails if you can. I'm trying to send him one every day if I can. And also there was the demonstration yesterday, as I'm actually giving this over, Saturday the 3rd of August in central London. Now, there were one or two disturbing aspects, very heavy police presence, but this heavy police presence apparently allowed Antifa to get rather too close to Tommy supporters. And there is video footage of Danny Tomo being viciously assaulted by police. However, I think the people who went made their point, and the fight continues. Tommy Robinson is, according to his letter, planning to make an appeal, and of course that's not going to be cheap. So if anyone can help, please do so. I'll give a link below. So, as well as that, I actually came across something from nearly a month ago, after the outrageous guilty verdict at the Old Bailey for Tommy Robinson, but before the actual sentencing. Gerard Batten was talking to one of the Canadian journalists that Ezra Levant brought over, released on 8th of July. I'll give a link below. It's really worth listening to if you haven't. It's about 5 minutes. And as Mr. Batten said, it was a trumped-up charge and a political verdict. We now have a corrupt legal system. You are not free now to have freedom of opinion, the ability to address ideas and ideologies. You can now be convicted of crimes for doing that. We are living in a very, very dangerous place now in our country. Now, he quoted a passage by Winston Churchill, which was actually written in 1899, I believe. And according to Gerard Batten, you can be convicted of hate speech for saying this. So I'm going to say it because I'm not subject to British law for anything I post online. I live in a free country. I live in Israel. And for that reason, I feel a strong need to use my freedom to help the fight for all our rights in Britain, which are fast eroding. Very chilling what Gerard Batten had to say. So this is what Winston Churchill wrote. It's rather florid and Victorian, of course, of its time, but I think you'll get the point. Excuse me. How dreadful are the curses which Mohammedanism lays on its votaries. Besides the fanatical frenzy, which is as dangerous in a man as hydrophobia in a dog, that's rabies, there is this fearful fatalistic apathy. The effects are apparent in many countries: improvident habits, slovenly systems of agriculture, sluggish methods of commerce, and insecurity of property exist wherever the followers of the Prophet rule or live. A degraded sensualism deprives this life of its grace and refinement, the next of its dignity and sanctity. The fact that in Mohammedan law every woman must belong to some man as his absolute property, either as a child, a wife, or a concubine, must delay the final extinction of slavery until the faith of Islam has ceased to be a great power among men. Individual Muslims may show splendid qualities. Thousands become the brave and loyal soldiers of the Queen, that's Victoria, or know how to die. But the influence of the religion paralyzes the social development of those who follow it. No stronger retrograde force exists in the world. Far from being moribund, Mohammedanism is a militant and proselytizing faith. It has already spread throughout Central Africa, raising fearless warriors at every step. And were it not that Christianity is sheltered in the strong arms of science, the science against which it had vainly struggled, the civilization of modern Europe might fall as fell the civilization of ancient Rome. This is from the original 2-volume set of The River Wars by Winston Churchill, written in 1899. And yes, that's the same Winston Churchill who 40 years later was perhaps the greatest prime minister Britain has had, leading us through the Second World War, leading the fight against another ideology which threatened to destroy the freedoms of Europe, that of Nazism. Now, other news. On the 23rd of July, the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government announced that an independent advisor has been appointed by our British government to provide expert advice on a definition of Islamophobia. This independent advisor is Imam Kari Asim MBE, Deputy Chair of the Anti-Muslim Hatred Working Group. Very independent, don't you think? I'll give a link to the announcement below as well. Of course, this is looking at the whole problem backwards. There's no such thing as Islamophobia, a supposed irrational fear on racial grounds of Muslims, when Islam isn't a race, it's an ideology, and Muslims can be of any ethnicity. But when you read some of the later verses of the Quran and also the Hadith with regard to how to treat non-Muslims, which command the abuse and even the murder of other human beings simply because of their beliefs, then surely any reasonable and sane person is bound to have very deep ethical concerns about the consequences of anyone seriously and wholeheartedly following them. Verses in the Quran, such as Surah 8, verse 12, which concludes with these chilling words, "I will cast terror into the hearts of those who disbelieve. Therefore strike off their heads and strike off every fingertip of them." Ever wondered why Lee Rigby lost his head? Comes from the Quran. Or Surah 8, verse 39, which reads, "And fight with them until there is no more unbelief and religion is all for Allah." Or among many other deeply troubling verses, Surah 48, verse 29, "Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those with him are ruthless against the disbelievers and merciful among themselves." Other verses include Surah 9, verse 5, 9, verse 29, and it's estimated there are about 100 or so which are ethically deeply problematic. And Muhammad's own life in his later years, as recorded in the Sirah, totally Islamic writings, is also very troubling, for the supposed best example of a holy prophet for Muslims to follow. Essentially, he and his early followers fought, thieved, enslaved, raped and murdered their way through Arabia. While Muhammad appears to have taken various aspects of his religion from some of the practices of Jews and Christians of his time, the golden rule of treating all other people with sensitivity and respect, doing unto others as you would have them do to you, in Christianity and Judaism, which surely forms the underpinning of the whole of Western civilization. And the 10 Commandments, most of which Muhammad actually is recorded as breaking, never made their way into the Quran or the Hadith. So, if you care about Britain and its future for all its people, this has nothing to do with racism, ethnicity. It's about simple humanity for all British people. If you care, then whatever the consequences, we need to tell the truth and to criticize openly the political anti-infidel teachings of Islamic ideology for the evil which they promote. And when informed Muslims publicly reject and apologize for all the hatred and bigotry towards non-Muslims contained in their holy books, which lies behind the murder of some 270 million people by jihadis over the last 1400 years. Only then can Imam Qari Asim MBE, only then, Imam, can we have a real conversation about human rights and prejudice, not before. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good day, have a great week, and please pray, send good thoughts to Tommy Robinson and his family, and support him in any way you can. Thank you so much. Goodbye.